Frederick Christie, the interviewer, and Jean Marie Christie, the photographer. Uh, Now, you served in World War II, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Let's, where were you born? Let's start with your early years.
I was actually born in the Bronx in New York.
Okay.
Lived in Yonkers until about 30s, and then moved to Reading here.
Really? Good for you. And when did you join the service?
In 1943.
1943. Do you remember the month?
January. I served till January of 46.
Okay.
3 years and 3 months in the Air Force.
What branch of the service?
In the Air Force.
In the Air Force. So they called it the Air Force in those days?
No, it was the Air Corps. And that was the Air Corps first, and then they changed it to the Air Force.
Okay. And just in general terms, where did you serve?
Well, I started in my basic training in Camp Kearns, Utah. And
okay, let's pause there. Camp Kearns, did you say?
Kearns, Kearns.
Okay, Camp Kearns.
And that's outside of Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Very high. And then after 13 weeks of basic training, we started over again for a few more weeks. So they shipped us to Columbia, South Carolina, the Air Force Base at Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay. And what were they? What was your job? What was your responsibility?
And then I was just a regular GI, and moving. Sorry, pull a blank for a minute. I'm trying to think I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. We'll talk some more, and maybe the name will come to you.
No, it's a fruit we eat for breakfast.
The grapefruit?
Apricots.
Apricots.
I'm sorry. But see, Camp Kearns is so close to California. They shipped all the apricots there, and we had apricots for 3 meals a day. And then after I finished my basic training, we went to a warehouse and we moved cases of apricots from here to there, and the next day we moved from there to here. Typical Army work. Keep your busy.
How many enlistees were there in your basic training at Camp
I
Kearns?
can't remember the complete number.
Was it a big
It was a very large setup. Yeah.
Now, how did you end up in the Army Air Corps?
I was shipped by just chance more than anything else. Because it's one of those things, at the time we're willing to serve, but being married, you kind of wonder whether you should go or not, But when you start taking the physical, the one thing you hope to do is that you pass the physical. Mm-hmm. So you do that, then they give you an intelligence test, and I didn't give it a real serious thought, but I made out quite well on it anyway, the intelligence tests they had. So that when we shipped to Columbia, South Carolina, they had a new program, and I did something that you're not supposed to do in the Army. That's volunteer. But it seems that they were having problems with the B-17 gunners out there. They were out there, instead of shooting the gun at the enemy coming at them, they were out there waving to them, very happy. They were completely anoxic, which is simply an oversupply of lack of oxygen.
Sure.
They didn't realize they didn't put their oxygen masks on. And so the Air Surgeon's Office evidently drafted a number of college professors, and you had to be a college professor to be an officer. I had a BS degree, so I was a buck sergeant, but it was a very a pleasant deal anyway. And we did altitude. First of all, we did altitude training. had a huge metal tank that would reduce the pressure, the same altimeters that you use in an airplane to go up and take them up to 10,000 feet and hold them there for a while, giving each fellow a clipboard to sign their name and the serial number, something you never forget. Like mine, I think 317278747. It's just automatic.
Okay, now before we go on with the story, we have to get that number correct. So
31278747.
A lot of sevens.
That's how it works. And but at any rate, they were writing it, and pretty soon, as they you get a lack of oxygen. Of course, we could pick it out. Like first thing you notice, like with alcohol, it was exactly the same thing. Alcohol prevents your blood from absorbing oxygen. So as they're going up in altitude, you get less and less oxygen, and the fingernails turn blue, lips turn blue, and then next thing you know, you start getting a shake in there, and of course the writing is horrible, and and then they pass out. And so we put that oxygen mask on, bring them to, and convince them that they needed oxygen above 10,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the instructors had to put up with a constant problem, and they developed, each one of us developed a certain thing. If I felt a pressure across my forehead, I'd immediately check my own oxygen line, and there'd be somebody stepping on it or folding it, trying to knock the instructor out, not realizing that life depended on me, but that was, some people weren't that sharp.
Now, you were a buck sergeant, you said, at that time?
Well, actually, I have to repeat back again. The thing I joined, the Air Surgeon's Office developed this altitude training unit. That was the altitude training. Then so I proved they needed oxygen above 10,000 feet. And we had they'd fly crews in, and we trained them for that, prove to them by knocking them out that they had to have it. Of course, they did look at it just like a person drunk thinks they can get up and drive a car. They say, "Oh, I can do that right away." Well, for instance, specifically, we would take the gunners. They were the hardest ones to convince, but we had a block from a 15 caliber machine gun, and we could take it apart. So we'd wait until, but they got a little noxic, little nails, and then take the little block out and take it apart. Of course, they say we could do it immediately. We could do it in seconds, and they could normally. But you hand it to them, and of course, there being anoxic, they start fumbling, and really they couldn't take it apart. The only thing, you had to be very careful, because these same fellows, being the gunners, were apt to throw it at you as handed to you. So we had that problem. And then we, along with the altitude training, we'd give them a emergency survival lesson. We were told whether these were given a survival lesson for the desert, for the jungle, for the north Arctic things, and well, many times they didn't go where they were trained to go, but that was part of the act. And then we get in the lesson. Because there were always certain things you could pick out that they would ask common questions, like, do blue-eyed fellows become more daring? Are they more sharp as gunners than brown-eyed people? So it's just a matter of.
Now, this unit that you were part of that did the high altitude training and the survival training. Do you remember what they called that unit?
Yeah, it was an altitude training unit.
Altitude training unit.
Because that was the start of it. And they found we actually took all kinds of planes. They'd fly them B-17, B-24s for training and stuff at Columbia Army Air Base. And then another problem arose, and that was that over the European theater, they had to identify the plane they were going to shoot down before they could shoot it down. Because there you might have French or Belgian or many different other makes, so you had to really identify it before you shoot it down, and they couldn't do it. Now remember, this is before the electronic night vision.
Mm-hmm.
So it so happened that this tied in with work I had done at UConn with my biology and stuff. So I wrote the program, or the larger part of the program for in night vision. And this is for Dr. Bronk at the Air Surgeon's Office in Washington. And the officer that worked with me was Charles Wilson. He was the first lieutenant. Then when he went up to Washington, they gave him the Pentagon Star as well. So we had his star weight. And when we went to Italy and North Africa.
Well, let's go back, because you've mentioned a couple of things that I'd like to explore with you. You were how old when you joined the service?
25 years old. I wanted to become a pilot until I was too old, which is normal. The one younger fellows more faster reactions.
Okay, and what was your educational background when you joined?
I had gone through UConn and
That's University of Connecticut.
BS degree of University of Connecticut. Yes, of course.
And that was at Storrs?
It was called Storrs. I called it college when I started.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
My age. So
and what year did you graduate from?
1939.
1939. And you said earlier that you had lived in Weston, in Reading here, since the 30s. So you were living here when you...
Well, of course, with time, spent a couple of years in Chicago, and then I was even over a year Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, selling feed and grain, stuff like that. So before I came back to Stratford. So.
Okay, so you lived in Stratford when you enlisted?
I didn't enlist. I was drafted.
Okay, you were drafted.
I was drafted because of that, and then went up to Fort Devens.
All right, so you were drafted into. In those days, did they draft you into a service, or did they just draft you and assign you to?
No, they assigned a service.
Okay, so they. Where were you?
Sheer chance.
Where were you inducted?
To Fort Devens. In Massachusetts.
Fort Devens. So you were sworn in Massachusetts, and then you went to Camp Kearns.
Camp Kearns in Utah for basic training, and then to Columbia Army.
And at what point in that process, after basic training or during basic training, were you assigned to the Army Air Corps?
Oh, that was when I was inducted up at Fort Devens.
Okay. So you knew you were going to be in the Army Air Corps at that point.
Right. And then, say, I volunteered down at Columbia Army Air Base. They asked for volunteers because they weren't sure exactly how the altitude was going to affect you working in a pressure chamber was going to affect the person.
Right. So how many soldiers in your unit were there in that high altitude training group?
In our group, there were, about 30 fellows altogether.
And you went to various locations?
No, we stayed at Columbia Army Air Base where they had the huge chamber, pressure chamber.
Was that a new thing, or had they been using that pressure chamber before you got there?
They set it up before that. It wasn't exactly new, but we enlarged on it. And then, along with it, we started a program on a lake on the air base in Columbia. It goes back to World War I, actually, when there's a crash or anything happened. The people say, oh, the first one, we had to have two more. It goes back to the World War I, where if they lit a cigarette, 3 cigarettes, a sniper could kill one of them. Coming in, so the
3 on a match.
Exactly the same thing, and it's really quite deeply ingrained too, because it would what would happen would have one B-25, Columbia Army Air Base was a B-25 base, and they had one crash, and then the other people would say, oh gee, there'll be two more, and they tighten up, and cause problems until we had two more crashes, and then no more for a long time.
Interesting.
So, psychologically, it was quite a deal.
When you got to Columbia, were you still a sergeant at that point?
And I was that's how I became a sergeant after I was in the unit.
Okay.
I was a private, and when I volunteered and things, but evidently my IQ test passed.
Did they recognize the fact that you had a science degree?
Yeah, they did along with it. So I say as a volunteer, but we also started another thing. We found that they were having trouble with the ditching planes, and the plane fell in the ditch. Then they wouldn't know how to get out of the air. They come down a parachute, even if they ejected. They come down a parachute, and the shrouds would get all around and drown them. So we've had the mechanics on the base waterproof crash B-25, and we taught them how to get out of the plane.
To ride it down.
I'm ditching, because the raft would come out, the waste, the gunners were fine, they were taken care of. But on a B-25, there's a panel over the pilots, about, say, 18 at the most wide and 20 some odd inches long, that the pilot, co-pilot, and bombardier have to come out through and get down to the wing and into the plane. So we let them do it themselves at first, and they thought they did make a good time. But then they say, oh, didn't we do well? I said, yes, but you're drowned for 3 minutes, because those planes go down very, very rapidly. Matter of fact, we had a very unusual circumstance. We got a thank you letter back from the Pacific, a crew that had to ditch. They said if they hadn't had our training, they never would have made it, and that would give it quite a thrill. But to go along with old father, the air surgeon was again faced with the problem of night vision, as I mentioned, in Europe, how to do it. So I wrote a program using the natural eye, because a lot of people try to see at night the same way they do at daytime, when actually at night you have a blind spot in the center of your eye. All you do is look, if you want to go down a path over here, you look over there, and you bring the path in on the side of, because I mean, in the center you have the,
You say macro.
You have the fine as blank. The visual purple or rotention builds up on the rods, on the peripheral vision. That's why if you look to the side, you can see a path over here. You'll be able to make it out.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Well, let's go back, because we're jumping around a little bit, and I'd like to keep it sort of moving along. How long did you stay in Columbia? Approximately.
Oh, gosh, must have been 2 years. I guess altogether.
And during that time that you were there, were you doing the same work? In other words,
same type of work, except we wrote this. That's one thing I'll have to admit to you. In my mind, everything happened yesterday. The time factors are gone. So it's hard for me to pin down something to a definite time.
well, approximately. We're not trying to hold you to anything specific here.
But I was saying we developed this. I don't know where to go now. I talked about the ditching. So we had that was one of our side programs. But then the air surgeon was faced with the problem of not being able to identify him in Europe. They wanted a night vision program, so we wrote it up, and then this well, Lieutenant Wilson and I went to North Africa, across over to Naples and into Italy, and there we had to sell our program to the Allied headquarters before we could go out and sell and I had to actually do the effective work. So it was a good experience, and I'm very proud of our Air Force and our soldiers. So we have so much, I say, equality in it. And it was other armies like the English and any other army you want. They're very rigid. The non-commissioned officers there are sergeants. They don't even bother with the privates are like dirt. They have their own club and thing. And ours, you're very equal. The pilots know the mechanics that are fixing their car, their plane, have to fix the plane, but they don't have to fly it. So they treat them very nicely. And
Let's go back to you mentioned Lieutenant Wilson.
yes,
Do you remember his first name?
Richard Wilson. Yeah, he was a professor at Duke University.
He was a professor at Duke before he joined the Army.
Yeah, and but there was a very interesting example, say, of equality. When we went to we landed in Naples. I have some instances I could throw in there, but I'll leave them out now. We had to prove our case, so we go out and train the people. And the only one they could darken was the war room, but I was qualified as well as all the rest of them, so we could go in the war room and darken it, because we had made our own equipment. We had a small box with an electric motor on top that activated a circular piece of wood. And on that, we took little pictures. Actually, there were shadows of planes, smaller than your little finger, hung on a single an nylon thread, and had them going around and around. So that's why we had to have a room that could darken completely. And then we cast that on a wall going around. And of course, and as your visual purple or rotation built up, you could pick them out. And so that was a part of our training. We could show it. So we even had a telephone pole hung on one to go by just for the fun of it. And it was very interesting, as everyone has different ability to have a visual acuity at that night. And the rotation built up. So we went in, as we walked in, now there were all officers of all different armies that were there at the King's Palace at Caserta, was where we had met them. And with all their pips and stripes and everything, I don't know what their ranks were, but of course it was the interesting thing was, here I was a buck sergeant with my stripes on, and you can imagine as we're walking into the war room, and all these fellows with all these stripes and pips and stuff, and looking at a sergeant walking in with them at the same time. And I sat down in the back of the room, and Wilson, with his first lieutenant bars and the Pentagon star, got up and introduced it. They accepted it very nicely. He told them, now we have this program that night vision, asked by the Air Surgeon's office, and Sergeant McQuade wrote most of the programs, so I'll have him fill you in on it. And you can just imagine, when I walked up there, these fellows all came to attention in their seats, and you just see because of the importance they put on the rank of a man. Well, I gave them my talk. Of course, they're trying to think of a question, but if you've written a program,
They can't fool you.
can't fool it at all. So it was to me, it was very interesting to see that.
Well, when about was that presentation in Italy?
Uh,
Remember, you've been in
It would've
Colombia for 2 years.
Yeah, it would have been 40 around. I would say 45, but I'm just guessing.
Okay, that's fine.
And working. So then we would travel. Then we went to different bases, training night fighters.
Where was that presentation again? You mentioned the place, but I didn't catch it.
Caserta, the King's Palace at Caserta.
Caserta.
That was the Allied headquarters.
CASSERTA.
Just like it sounds.
Okay.
Caserta. And,
So we could tell, if we could find out when the headquarters was in Caserta, we could tell when you were there.
Well, it was there. And I say, of course, again, it was very interesting that we drew our own Jeep there, but I didn't have a GI license. And so Lieutenant Wilson had to do the driving. And you can imagine when we came up to roadblocks in Italy, especially with the English, they snapped to when they saw a first lieutenant driving a Jeep and look over and see a sergeant sitting down very casually, no tie, foot off the side of the Jeep. And it gives us a lot of kicks.
Interesting. Let's go back to Colombia, if you don't mind. We'll talk about Colombia some more. Did your rank change while you were in Colombia?
Just to be sergeant. I stayed as sergeant.
All right, I'm not familiar with Army rank, but when you say a buck sergeant, that's an E4?
Three stripes. Well, the thing is, the reason I stayed the same was because the wax came on the base. And it took all our military rank orders out. We lost completely all the other. I was scheduled to become a master sergeant. The next week, they came on. They got the master sergeant rank of all the other ranks that were available. So that really wiped us out. So
you mean they wiped out the insignia that you had available?
Well, it's just available, yeah. That's it. They all turned them all over to the wax. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, when we're down in Colombia, we've identified Richard Wilson, Lieutenant Wilson. Do you remember any other of your colleagues there?
Actually, no.
Okay.
There were three other professors. There.
Did they come and go, or did they stay pretty much with that unit?
Stay pretty much with it. Yeah. I had other friends there, so yeah. But I say, we traveled. I was trying to get it. When you say it's, I don't know if you want this in your. Hope or not, you can cut it. Is the fact that we were writing our own orders.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we naturally took advantage of it.
Yeah.
And sent ourselves to Pisa and Rome and a few other things.
Now on that trip that you and Lieutenant Wilson went on to Italy and made your presentation at Caserta, were there other members of your group that were with you?
No, we were the only two that ran the program.
And you did all the training in Europe then?
That's right, we did. That was a very short period, of course, because then they came out with the electronic night vision. That took place for our training.
Mm-hmm. How many, do you remember any of the places you went to train while you were there?
No, well, we started on the Mediterranean side and then went across the whole of Italy with the Adriatic side. Of course, it was interesting. The Jeep always had one wheel in a hole because they took the mines out, they put gravel in, but that was soon kicked out. So oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some instances of perhaps for, I don't know whether you want to put it on a record or not, but the thing I skipped over, when we landed in Naples, I had to go to the enlistment back for accommodations to sleep, and Wilson went to the officers. And so I walked in, here's a fellow behind the supply counter. Was a fellow, he was a master sergeant down in Columbia, South Carolina, and he used to always, he bugged me because he knew I had the ROTC training from Yukon, and anytime he wanted an honor guard, anything like that, he put my name on it, and I bugged him on that. But of course, it helped when I wanted to get a ride on the plane. I could do that.
Now, when you went across Italy doing your training, you went from airfield to airfield?
Yeah, from base to base. And then, of course, that was I'll tell you, I'm used to telling things that are original to me. The thing that we had to go for like at noontime, we had to eat. I would go to the mess hall, and we had an Allied headquarters pad. So the sergeant, the mess sergeant would say, "Okay, what do you want? Steak or anything else to eat?" I ate well, but the officers all had, I don't know whether you were an officer or not, but they all had to pay for their own meals. And so they had soup at noontime, and when we came back to the Jeep after I had a fantastic meal, and Wilson had soup, he always compared notes, and he wanted me to invite him, but I said, these are enlisted men's place. But by the same side, when I went to supply, we first got to Naples and get my bedding supply. The sergeant, as soon as he saw me, he recognized me, of course, and he gave me 2 blankets. He said, "Well, these are not registered. No problem. Put them in your barracks bag." Well, I had them there. Of course, as we went along, Wilson would say, "Well, if we got stuck, I could use one of your blankets, couldn't it?" I said, "No, these are enlisted men blankets." we had a fantastic, we had a great relationship.
Did you, that raises the question, when you finished your service, did you ever get in touch with Lieutenant Wilson?
I tried, but I couldn't fail. I even looked him up, and I found the article where Dr. Bronk instigated this training, but I couldn't find him. I never could locate him again.
Now, Dr. Bronk was the Surgeon General?
Air Surgeon.
The Air Surgeon.
Yeah.
Now, how do you spell Bronk?
B-R-O-N-K.
Okay. Okay. And you remember his first name by any chance?
No.
But he was...
that's why I had a type paper. I can't recall where they are.
But he was in Washington.
In Washington, yes.
So this, but this unit that you were attached to that did the house training and
still came after the training.
That was a very important unit then because
it was under him, yes. And what I was saying, the reason this sergeant was there, he was an Irishman. He from Columbia, South Carolina. He bummed a ride to Ireland, and of course he was AWOL. They caught him, so they broke him and sent him to Italy.
Did now, if our timing is right, that you were there probably in 1945, VE Day came pretty soon after you were there.
Well, that was after I got back home.
Okay. Yeah. How long were you back home before VE Day?
The night I was back, my father got a room for us at the Hotel Astor in New York. When my wife came down, and we were down there in Times Square when the they declared it.
Okay, so you were actually on your way back.
Well, I was on my way back, and the plan was we were supposed to go onto the Pacific, train night fighters. But in the Pacific, there was no real problem because there was just the Japanese and the Americans, and they knew where the Americans were. So anything else you could shoot down.
So here you are coming back from Europe.
Yeah.
And where did you go after your leave?
Then my outfit was transferred from Columbia, South Carolina to McQuade-World, New Mexico. So when I got back and rejoined as White Sands Proving Ground,
Okay.
and when I got back to me and my outfit at White Sands Proving Ground, they said, "Oh, you should have been here last week." Had a big ammunition dump blew up out in the back. You know what that was?
Yes.
The atomic test and something. They didn't tell them. And I had White Sands Proving. And then I went to Wright Field, and then I was
Where is Reichfield?
Ohio, Wright Field. Is it Columbia, Ohio?
I'm not sure if there's
It's in Ohio.
Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T.
Yeah.
That's probably Columbus.
Columbus, Ohio. And so I was there, and we were training, altitude training there.
So you were continuing to do the altitude training,
Yeah.
and that means you were training incoming flyers.
Right, coming.
And what was your rank at that point?
Still sergeant, still Buckside. They stole the wax stole all the ratings that we had. I said, and it really didn't bother me that much as far as the rank, except the fact I wanted more money.
Yes, I would think that there would be a little benefit to the rank there.
At home.
Did you, when you were, for example, at Alamogordo or Wright, did your wife join you?
She came down a couple of times at Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay.
That's all. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. I'd like to tell you this. I don't know if I record or not. And we said to ourselves in Rome, it was quite a. When you said it was horrible, there's a lot of real benefit. I had experienced that very few people get, and that is we drove into Rome, and Wilson said, "Well, if we go up to the office of the Red Cross, we get a map, maybe we get around better." Okay, so we took the rotor out of our Jeep and put a chain around the steering wheel with a big heavy lock on it, because about half the fellows in Rome were running around with a rotor for a Jeep in their pocket, and would take it. So we had a lot of stairs to go up. As we were going up the stairs, a second lieutenant came down the stairs with a young Italian boy. And as soon as he saw me, he said, "Mac, what are you doing over here?" Because this second lieutenant had been in charge of the gunnery range at Columbia Army Air Base. I used to go up Sunday morning and ski shoot with the gunners out there. I took advantage of anything I could do. Of course, I might say, while I was in the Air Force, I also took a course in carpentry, a correspondence course, because it was offered by the government to help me build this house. And so, but anyway, he said, "Now, he introduced a young fella here. So this is Vincent Rockabella, and I'm going around with his sister." And Wilson and I looked at each other, we didn't say anything, and he said, he's going to take me over to St. Peter's and to take him a tour through where you'd like to go. So, as you would know, well, have you been to Rome and St. Peter's?
Not inside the cathedral, but at the Vatican.
Well, when you go to see, most people come in under the famous painting by Michelangelo. Well, we went up the stairway to the Kings, because Vincent knew all the Swiss guards. We went up the stairway to the Kings, came in a little wooden door on the far end, and there was the painting before. and then they took us through the Pope's private rooms,
Wow.
all the way up through within one room where the Pope,
And this was Vincent Rockefeller, did you say?
Rockefeller,
Rockefeller.
yeah, Rockefeller, yeah.
And why do you remember his name so well?
It's one of these things to do. I can still picture the short fellow, all in black, with the gold glasses and stuff.
And the second lieutenant, who was, what was his name?
I don't remember his name now at all. Oh, yes, I do. That's why we look at each other, because I'll lead up to it another way, if you don't mind. Coming back through the rooms, we came to one of the Pope's private rooms, had an organ in it. The walls were covered with leather, with the Fleur de Lis of France imprinted on it, and we, as we came through, Vincent said to the second lieutenant, "Play the organ. Nobody can hear you here." So he started. He's a very good musician. He played beautifully, and then, of course, Wilson and I were breaking up. Vincent couldn't figure out why. Vincent said, "No, play like you were playing the other night." So this fellow starts knocking out boogie boogie, and the fellow here we wondered why we were breaking up. The fellow was Jewish. A Jewish fellow playing boogie boogie on a Pope's organ. It was quite an interesting.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
A lot of fun. But then he said, of course, his father came out of a private audience, and we met him, and he told us, "Be sure to see your uncle. Take him down to see your uncle." His uncle was in charge of the Vatican City Bank. So we went through that, and then he took us through the museum, and we saw things that people never, let's see, anybody that's going to St. Peter's again, I asked him to try and check on something for me, because it's hard to believe, but I am an Episcopal, but still I revere the Mass that was going on. But all the Italian churches I found, they have a Mass going on, but people walking around the outside like it was a stock market. But Vincent said now in St. Peter's they had a huge altar. If you've seen it with the twisted black and white columns and the straight ones.
I may have seen pictures.
And was standing with your back to that, looking at the back wall. There was Vincent said, "Now see that doorway? The doorway there. Either side of it was a huge pedestal that came up about 5 foot from the floor, and on top of each pedestal was a beautiful lion."
Yeah.
Now the artists that did work for the church wouldn't sign their works, so the artist did the first part of the lion, the front of the lion. It was beautiful. But now Vincent said, "Come with me." We walked against the back wall and looked at the back of the lion, and you weren't looking at a lion at all. The flank of the lion became the ear of an elephant, and the tail became a trunk. The artist's name was Elephantitis, and the apprentices signed the work for him by putting that on.
Interesting.
I always ask people to check that for me.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to know. Let's go back to your military career. Did you ever get up in the airplanes?
Oh yes, that's why I get to fly cage rides, fly.
Okay, but as a passenger, you weren't a crew.
No, not as crew, just a passenger.
And what kind of
the B-25s.
B-25s, and they were available to servicemen to hitch rides on?
Well,
if you knew who to talk to.
That's why I said that Master Sergeant, who always drafted me for the work, how to pay back.
Yeah. Did anybody ever shoot at you?
Nope, I never.
Not that you know of.
Actually, I found it extremely interesting. All my work going in there.
But to sort of capsulize your military activity, your career, if you will, it was training.
It was training other people.
Yeah.
Well, actually, as a result of that, when I came back, I didn't want to go back on the road selling. So, the only time my wife ever fooled me, she made teaching look so easy. I said, what a racket, 180 days a year, vacation, and then I'm going for that. So I thought it was a little different, but I went back and got a teacher's college and got educational credits and began teaching. And eventually I became a science coordinator at the high school.
Mm-hmm. While you were in the service, well, let's say, when did you get discharged?
63. I think it was January 63. Again.
63?
Yeah.
So you were in the
40,
reserve?
No, not 63. 30, 36, 36. I reversed my figure. You probably can't read this, but I'll give you one.
You put that back.
Read it if you will.
So you started.
You can read. You can read it. Do you get enough light on that?
Well, we can look at it more closely when we're done. I just wanted to get an idea of when you went in and when you came out.
3 years and 3 months. I know.
Okay.
My first.
Now, during those 3 years and 3 months, did you have leave and get home at all?
I did not have leave. No.
Okay, and that's why I asked
Yeah,
if your wife.
my wife came down to Columbia, South Carolina, one summer.
Okay.
2 other sergeants were they had a house in Columbia and they were going to school, so I sold that.
Mm-hmm. 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 And did you have children at the time?
No.
No.
Oh, I knew before we got married we couldn't have children. When people ask why I had children, my usual answer is hundreds.
I know, you were a teacher.
but that's like the question that people ask when they come see the doctor. Have you lived here all your life? And I love the expression when I say not yet.
I'm just referring to my notes here. Did the unit that you were attached to, the high altitude training guys, that sounds like an inaccurate title, because since you were training various other things as well, night vision and recognition of.
But it ran under that heading.
Mm-hmm. Did they expand that unit and make it bigger, or?
No, it was actually just one unit.
Okay. Are there any? You've told us some very interesting stories, but do you remember any other names of people you may have been friends with in the unit or elsewhere in the service, or running into other units that you remember?
Yeah, I'd say it might be like there was an old army man, Frank Chikowski, lived out in Yakima, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He was an old army man. The only reason they put him in my squad because I could spell his name.
But he was one of your trainers?
He was one of he worked within my unit. Yeah.
Okay. And when your unit, did your unit travel as a group? In other words, all 30 of you would go somewhere, or?
No, they came to us.
Right. Okay.
They flew into us.
Okay. And do you know about how many flyers went through the high altitude training?
Absolutely no idea. No. I can say experience in Italy one time. We had a place we had the hallway confined with basements. We had because the buildings were all completely wrecked, and we had to stuff them with blankets and things to make it dark enough. But we had a unit of pilots, co-pilots, and bombardiers we're going to give night vision training to. And as they came down the staircase, I was standing there. They looked at me over and back, and they go over and they talk to each other, look back. And after a while, you wonder what happened. You know, am I out of uniform?
Yeah.
Something else wrong with it? And one of them came over and said, "Did you teach survival at Columbia Army Air Base?" I said, "Yes, I did." And he's the guy. We gave him Arctic survival. Of course, they ended up in Italy. That's why, which is normal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can imagine. Well, nobody knew where you were going to end up. That makes sense to me. Did you ever look up or find any of your colleagues from the Army after the war?
I did. I hit Shizuki out there. And, my wife and I used to drive across country every other year, and different roads.
And you said he was in Yakima?
Yakima, Washington.
I'm going to test you. Can you spell his last name?
CHOS. EWSKY. SKI.
Chozuski.
Shizuki.
Okay. And his first name was what?
Frank.
Frank.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting combination of friends to have.
Well, I had others right now.
No, I understand. I mean, this is a long time. We already talked about how long it's been.
And I have 100 new names to learn every year. The times I saw while I was teaching.
Yeah, and where did you teach?
Joel Barlow. I started at Joel Barlow High School.
Now, Joel Barlow is right here in Reading.
Yeah. Actually, I taught in Easton prior to that.
And you always taught science?
Down in Easton, I taught all subjects.
Really?
Yeah.
And that was high school level?
That was elementary to start with.
Okay. And then, how long did you teach at Joel Barlow? High school? Approximately.
Gosh, that's what I get is.
I bet it was a long time.
I retired in 1977, and high school was built in 59.
So were you there for the opening?
I was one of the first teachers in the high school.
So you do the math, it's 18 years or thereabouts at Joel Barlow.
I'm going to say 17, but I don't know, 18.
Well, and your wife is a teacher as well?
Yes, she was a teacher in the Reading Elementary.
And you built this house that we're sitting in, is that right?
That's right.
How long did it take you to build it?
About 2 years. Yeah, actually.
And it's still standing, bud.
Well, I got a home to prove it.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I know when my father-in-law built his house, or one of his houses, and nothing was going to take that house down.
I said, well, the thing is, if anything goes wrong, you can't blame the doggone contractor. You can't blame yourself.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You decided that you had been discharged in January of 1946. Did you belong to any reserve units or anything like that?
No, I was discharged from Mitchell Field.
Okay. And you went directly home to Weston, to Reading?
To Stratford.
To Stratford.
No big fuss, no parade, nothing.
No, I'm sure that's true.
Home on the train.
And did you participate with any veterans organizations like the VFW or the American Legion? Or?
No, I started with the Veterans of the Foreign War, but there were too many heroes for me, so I couldn't take that. And I didn't drink.
Well, that's 2 strikes against you, bud. So you were in it briefly, and then didn't stay with it. Did you ever have any reunions or get-togethers? We already talked about Frank, but were there unit reunions that you went to?
He's about the only one that I really met more.
Well, it was a small unit, small group.
Well,
How did you, looking back on your time in the service, how do you think that I shouldn't say changed you? I'm sure it changes everybody, but how do you look back on it? Are you?
I look on it as I miss my wife terribly, of course, but I look back at it as a great experience. I met so many people, did so many things.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's for very sure. And you served your country while you were doing it. And obviously your unit made a big difference.
And I felt, but I know that I go over to high school when I have Veterans Day and stuff. But I know that many of the youngsters, the fellows today, couldn't take the discipline.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why you have so many go in and they're discharged.
Yeah, do you, speaking of things like that, do you still have any uniforms?
I got my jacket, Eisner jacket upstairs.
Okay. Do you have your medals on it, or?
No, I didn't have any real medals except the sharpshooter and the good contact medal. And,
Well, those are two good ones to have.
and one from Mediterranean.
Do you participate in any like Veterans Day parades or that sort of thing?
Not in the parades, but when they had this program, I don't want to mention it, it was classified as Hitler the Madman was a fellow that started one of the history teachers many years ago, and it was all about World War II. And so I go over and talk to the class, the youngsters, and when they have Veterans Day, I go over and still talk to groups.
Well, that's very good. I think it's a part of history that young children, youngsters in the high school probably have no particular knowledge of, or it's not taught.
A different idea.
I'm sure it is. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to put on the record? Of any specific memories or observations or important facts that you would like to be part of the record that you have not told us about?
Well, that's one thing I missed, because while we were in Italy, we took film from gun cameras and Wilson took a lot of pictures. That's why I tried to get in contact, but I failed. I couldn't get in contact.
Well,
And
it's probably unlikely that he's still in doing what he was doing before.
that's right.
But
And
I think we're just about done. I thank you for your service. I thank you for your time today, and I assure you that this will be a valuable part of the collection at the Library of Congress and at the Connecticut Repository here as well. So, thank you very much, and happy birthday 3 months early.
good.
100 years.
Good.